Have you ever wondered why some forests are avoided even in broad daylight? Not because of wild animals, but because of what can't be seen, or worse, what's heard when no one is there. In the heart of Africa lies one such forest. Unmapped, untouched, and shrouded in thick fog and deeper secrets. The locals call it Okonibo, which means the forest of silence. But the silence here isn't peaceful. It's the kind that makes the hair on your neck stand tall. A silence so heavy, even the birds forget how to sing. Whispers of ancient spirits echo through the trees, spirits older than any kingdom. Older than the pyramids, older than memory itself. This isn't just a tale of fear. This is a story buried in myths passed from mouth to mouth, generation to generation. But never written down. Why? Because those who dared to speak of it too loudly often vanished without a trace. So why do people avoid this forest? What truly lives within its shadows? And what ancient pact was broken that cursed it forever? Join us as we take you deep into the legends, the rituals, the forbidden paths, and the chilling truths behind the African forest spirits that no one dares to enter. Chapter 1: The Enchanted Path. Our journey begins at the very edge of the forest, where the trees seem to whisper secrets even before you step inside. This is not a forest anyone dares to enter without first asking permission from the elders. The ones who remember the old stories, the ancient rituals, those who hold the key to the past. You see, Okonibo isn't just an ordinary forest. It was once a sacred place, believed to be the home of ancestral spirits, guarding the balance between the living and the dead. But as time passed, people began to lose respect for the forest. The land was rich with resources, and greed began to outweigh the fear. As the trees were felled, and the ground was dug, the spirits became restless. Those who ventured too far into the forest, seeking fortune, adventure, or even to discover what lay beyond, never returned. It was said that the spirits were angry because the forest was sacred ground, it was not meant to be disturbed. One such story is told by an old woman from a neighboring village. She recalls her uncle, a renowned explorer, who ventured into the heart of the forest years ago. He was never seen again, but there was something strange. In the days leading up to his disappearance, villagers reported strange sounds, whispers of names in the wind, the beating of drums in the distance. The elders say these are the spirits calling, reminding us that the forest is not to be entered lightly. But as more time passed, fewer and fewer villagers believed in these warnings. For many, the mystery surrounding the forest grew more enticing. Chapter 2: The Forbidden Journey. The year was 1923. Despite the warnings, despite the centuries of stories passed down through the generations, a group of adventurers decided they would be the first to map the Okonibo forest. They believed the old tales were simply that, tales, created to keep people from entering. But they were wrong. The group, led by a young, ambitious explorer named Ikena, made their way to the edge of the forest. Ikena, a man of science, believed there was no place on earth that could not be understood with reason. He had heard the stories, but he saw them as myths, fables that had held people back from knowledge for far too long. But his belief would soon be tested. As they entered the forest, the world around them began to shift. The air grew thicker, and the shadows stretched unnaturally long, wrapping around the explorers like an unseen force. They pressed on, undeterred by the eerie atmosphere, eager to uncover what lay within the heart of Okonibo. At first, there was nothing but the dense vegetation and the strange silence that enveloped them. It was as if the forest was watching, waiting, but not yet revealing its secrets. Then came the sounds, the faint echoes of distant drums. Low, rhythmic, and primal. A warning, perhaps, or a call. Ikena and his team thought it was the wind, or an animal, but the beats grew louder, closer. They could feel it now, something ancient stirring beneath their feet. Something that was watching them, something that didn't want them there. The deeper they ventured, the less they could understand the landscape. The trees seemed to grow taller, their branches twisting unnaturally, and the thick fog that had begun to gather on the ground swirled at their feet, almost as if it were alive. The path seemed to disappear beneath them, but Ikena was resolute. He pushed forward, driven by the allure of the unknown. Little did they know, they were walking straight into the grasp of the spirits that had been disturbed for so long. Chapter 3, The First Warning. As the explorers ventured deeper into Okanibo, the forest seemed to become alive around them. The further they went, the more the forest seemed to shift, as if it were a living entity, molding itself to its own will. The air grew thick with an unsettling energy, and the sounds of the outside world faded into silence, leaving only the steady beat of the drums echoing in the distance. The explorers tried to remain calm, but the constant, eerie rhythm seemed to seep into their minds, clouding their thoughts. The trees were no longer just trees. They had begun to twist in unnatural ways, their roots emerging from the ground like veins, as though the earth itself were alive. The forest was watching them, waiting. It was Ikena who first noticed something strange. He stopped in his tracks, his face pale as he gazed at the path ahead. The mist had thickened, swirling like smoke around their feet, and he saw something flicker in the corner of his eye. A shadow, a figure that moved just outside their view. At first, he dismissed it as his imagination. But then it happened again. And again. Figures, fleeting shadows that seemed to be following them, always just out of sight. The rest of the group noticed it too, their unease growing with every passing minute. Whispers filled the air, whispers in a language they didn't understand, words carried on the wind. But they weren't words at all, they were commands, demands. "Turn back," the whisper said. "You are not welcome here." At that moment, one of the explorers, Kwame, felt a sharp pain in his chest, like an invisible force had gripped him. He cried out, falling to the ground, clutching his heart. The others rushed to his side, but by the time they reached him, the pain had passed. He stood up, his face pale and his eyes wide with terror. "We should leave," Kwame said, his voice shaky. "This place isn't what we thought." But Ikena was stubborn. He refused to turn back. The thirst for discovery, the desire to prove that the myths were just stories, overpowered any fear or warning. "We'll continue for just one more day," he insisted. "We are close. I can feel it." And so they pressed on, deeper into the heart of the forest, unaware that the spirits of the land were already preparing to make their presence known. Chapter 4, The Revelation of the Spirits. The following morning, the group of explorers awoke to a changed world. The forest seemed to have grown even darker, the air thicker with the stench of decay. The path, which had been clearly visible the day before, was now almost completely obscured by the mist, which swirled around their feet like a living thing. The oppressive silence that had haunted them the previous night seemed to have intensified, and even the birds had stopped singing. It was as if the forest itself had shut them out, unwilling to allow them any further. They pressed on despite their growing unease, but as they ventured deeper into the heart of Okanibo, something began to stir. The ground beneath their feet seemed to shift, almost as if the earth itself was alive. Strange markings began to appear on the trees, ancient symbols that no one could identify, yet they felt familiar, almost as if they had seen them before in the myths. It was Ikena who discovered the first real clue. Amid the mist, he saw a figure standing in the distance, bathed in a strange, otherworldly glow. The figure was tall, draped in robes of shimmering gold, its face obscured by a mask made of bone and wood. The figure seemed to beckon him, motioning for him to approach. Without thinking, Ikena began to walk towards the figure, his heart pounding in his chest. The others tried to stop him, but they were frozen in place, unable to move or speak, as if some unseen force held them back. As he drew closer, the figure spoke, its voice not coming from its mouth, but from the very air itself, echoing in Ikena's mind. "You seek to uncover the secrets of the forest," the voice said, "but be warned, for knowledge comes with a price. Ikena stood there, transfixed, unable to speak, his breath shallow as the figure continued. You are trespassers, it continued, and you have awakened the spirits of the forest. Now, they will decide your fate. Suddenly, the ground beneath Ikena's feet cracked open, revealing a chasm filled with swirling darkness. He felt himself falling, as though the very earth had opened up to swallow him. His body was gripped by an invisible force, and before he could scream, everything went black. When he awoke, he was lying on the forest floor, the figure gone. But the others were still frozen in place, and the air around him was thick with a heavy, oppressive silence. The spirits had made their presence known. Chapter 5: The Spirit's Wrath. When Ikena regained consciousness, the world around him had changed. The mist, once thick and impenetrable, had lifted slightly, revealing the true form of Okanibo. The forest, which had appeared eerie and unnerving before, now seemed to pulse with life. The trees stood taller, their branches entwining in complex patterns, as if they were reaching for something just out of sight. There was a sense of foreboding in the air, an overwhelming feeling that something ancient and powerful was watching them. The spirits had been awakened, and they were angry. Ikena tried to speak, but no words came out. His throat was dry, and his head throbbed painfully. He looked around, trying to make sense of his surroundings. His companions were still frozen in place, their faces contorted in expressions of fear and uncertainty. They had witnessed what had happened to him, but none could move, none could speak. It was then that the ground trembled. A low rumble, like the growl of a beast, echoed through the forest. It was followed by a deafening roar, and the trees around them began to shake, their branches snapping and twisting as though they were alive. The air became thick with an unearthly power, and the spirits of the forest made their presence known. From the shadows of the trees emerged creatures of myth and legend, spirits of the forest, shapeshifters and ancient beings, each more terrifying than the last. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light, their forms shifting and warping as they moved, their voices filling the air with an eerie chorus of whispers. One spirit, larger and more menacing than the others, stepped forward. Its body was a twisted amalgamation of human and animal features, its skin covered in scales that shimmered in the dim light. It had the face of a lion, its eyes burning with a fierce, untamed energy. "You have trespassed into our domain," it growled, its voice echoing in Ikena's mind. "You have disturbed the balance. And now you will pay the price." The ground beneath them cracked open, revealing a vast chasm that seemed to stretch into the very heart of the earth. A dark, suffocating energy poured from the depths, and the spirits howled in unison, their voices rising in a crescendo of fury. Ikena's heart raced. He could feel the power of the spirits pressing in on him, their energy overwhelming and suffocating. The force of their wrath was too much to bear, and just as he thought he might collapse under the pressure, a voice echoed in his mind. "Run!" It was the voice of the figure he had encountered earlier, the being who had warned him of the price of knowledge. And for the first time, Ikena understood the full weight of that warning. In an instant, the spirits of the forest surged forward, their forms twisting and shifting as they closed in on the group. Ikena knew they had no time to waste. He turned to his companions, shouting at them to run. But the spirits were too powerful, and the earth itself seemed to rebel against their every movement. As the group fled, the forest itself seemed to come alive, the trees bending and twisting to trap them, the ground rising up to block their path. The spirits pursued them relentlessly, their cries of rage echoing through the forest. The very fabric of reality seemed to tear apart around them, and Ikena realized they were no longer just in a physical forest, they had entered another realm entirely. But they had no choice but to keep running. Their lives depended on it. As Ikena and his companions stumbled through the forest, every step they took felt like an eternity. The spirits, relentless in their pursuit, seemed to grow stronger with each passing moment. The very forest itself had turned against them. The once beautiful, enchanting landscape was now a maze of shifting trees, jagged rocks, and unsettling shadows. The paths they once thought they knew had transformed into an endless labyrinth. In the distance, a faint light flickered. It wasn't much, but it was enough to spark hope in their hearts. Perhaps, just perhaps, they had found a way out. But the spirits were not done with them yet. A loud, thunderous roar echoed through the forest. The largest of the spirits, the one that had confronted Akena earlier, appeared before them once more. Its face twisted in fury, its body now towering over the group. It blocked their path, its glowing eyes filled with ancient wrath. "You have come too far," it bellowed, its voice shaking the very earth beneath their feet. The price must be paid. In a final, desperate act, Akena turned to face the spirit. He knew that their only chance of survival was to find a way to appease the spirits, to return the balance they had disrupted. He spoke, his voice trembling but determined, "We seek no more harm. We only wish to live. Please, allow us to go in peace." For a moment, there was silence. The spirit regarded him with a cold, calculating gaze. Then, as if it had made a decision, it nodded slowly. "The forest will release you, but you will never return. The price you have paid is your knowledge. You will forget all you have seen. The secrets of Okonibo will remain hidden from you, and you will carry the burden of this encounter for the rest of your days." With a final, unsettling growl, the spirit vanished, leaving behind only the sounds of the forest. Akena, exhausted and terrified, collapsed to his knees. He felt a wave of dizziness wash over him as his mind struggled to hold onto the memories of what had transpired. Slowly, the fog of the encounter began to lift, and the images of the forest spirits and the eerie landscape began to fade from his mind. The price of knowledge had been steep, but Akena and his companions had survived. They had been given a second chance. As they made their way back to the edge of the forest, they knew that the story they carried with them would never be told. The secrets of Okonibo, and the spirits that guarded it, would remain a mystery. But in their hearts, they would forever carry the weight of the ancient forest, and the terrible power that lay hidden within its depths. Did this story haunt you too? Then you're exactly where you belong. There's a world of forgotten gods, cursed lands, and hidden truths waiting to be unearthed. Subscribe now to Ancient African Secrets and join the growing tribe of truth seekers who refuse to let these tales vanish. New mythical journeys every week. Don't miss the next one. Like, comment your thoughts, and share if you believe these legends must live on. And remember, some stories are not just told, they awaken.